Imagine a force so powerful it can topple civilizations, yet so subtle it slips under the radar of our defenses. It's not evil, not corruption, not even ignorance in the traditional sense. It's something far more insidious: stupidity. Not the kind you laugh at when someone forgets their lines in a play or mispronounces a word, but a deeper, more dangerous kind. A willful surrender of thought that can turn good people into instruments of destruction. This is the heart of Dietrich Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity, a chilling insight born from the darkest chapter of human history. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian and anti-Nazi dissident, didn't just theorize about stupidity. He lived through its consequences. Imprisoned and eventually executed by the Nazis in 1945, Bonhoeffer witnessed how an enlightened, cultured society could fall under the spell of a murderous regime. His observations, penned in his seminal work Letters and Papers from Prison, reveal a truth that resonates today. Stupidity is not about a lack of intelligence, but a refusal to think critically, a surrender to conformity that makes us complicit in harm. This lesson will unpack Bonhoeffer's theory, explore its historical and modern relevance, and offer practical tools to resist its grip. Buckle up. This is a journey into the human mind, society, and the stakes of independent thought. Who was Dietrich Bonhoeffer? To understand the theory of stupidity, we must first know the man behind it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was no armchair philosopher. Born in 1906 in Breslau, Germany, now Wrocław, Poland, he was a Lutheran pastor, theologian, and one of the few voices who dared to speak out against the Nazi regime from its earliest days. Bonhoeffer came from a prominent family of intellectuals. His father was a renowned psychiatrist, his siblings excelled in academia, but he chose a path of faith and resistance. By the 1930s, as Hitler rose to power, Bonhoeffer saw the German church, once a beacon of moral authority, bend to Nazi ideology. He co-founded the Confessing Church, a movement resisting the Nazification of Christianity, and trained pastors in secret seminaries. His outspoken criticism led to his arrest in 1943, and he spent his final years in prison, where he wrote the letters that would immortalize his ideas. On April 9, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender, Bonhoeffer was hanged at Flossenbürg concentration camp. His courage and clarity of thought make his reflections on stupidity not just theoretical, but profoundly personal. Bonhoeffer's theory emerged from his attempt to answer a haunting question. How could a nation as educated and cultured as Germany fall under the spell of Nazism? His answer wasn't evil alone, it was stupidity, a social and moral failing that allowed evil to flourish. Let's dive into what he meant by this and why it's so terrifying. Defining stupidity. It's not what you think. When we hear stupidity, we often picture someone who can't solve a math problem or struggles with basic facts. But Bonhoeffer's definition is far more nuanced and alarming. In his essay, After 10 Years, written from prison, he argues that stupidity is not an intellectual defect, but a moral and sociological one. It's the voluntary surrender of critical thinking, the choice to conform rather than question, even when the evidence screams for scrutiny. Here's a key quote from Bonhoeffer: "Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice. One may protest against evil. It can be exposed, and, if need be, prevented by use of force. Evil always carries within itself the germ of its own subversion. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests nor the use of force accomplish anything here. Reasons fall on deaf ears. This is the crux of his theory. Stupidity is dangerous because it's impervious to reason. A malicious person can be debated, exposed, or restrained. But a stupid person, someone who has surrendered their will to think, rejects facts, dismisses contradictions, and clings to their beliefs with a self-satisfied certainty that makes them unpredictable and volatile. Bonhoeffer observed this in Nazi Germany, where educated citizens, not just the uneducated, rallied behind Hitler, not out of malice, but because they stopped questioning. To illustrate, consider a modern example: social media echo chambers. Imagine someone scrolling through their feed, seeing post after post, reinforcing a particular worldview. They encounter a fact that contradicts their beliefs, say, a study debunking a popular myth. Instead of engaging with it, they dismiss it as fake news or scroll past, irritated but unmoved. This isn't a lack of intelligence. It's a refusal to think critically, a choice to prioritize comfort over truth. Bonhoeffer would call this stupidity, and it's a pattern we see everywhere today. Why stupidity is more dangerous than evil? Bonhoeffer's bold claim that stupidity is worse than evil might seem counterintuitive. After all, evil is intentional, calculated harm, while stupidity seems harmless, even laughable. But Bonhoeffer argues that stupidity's danger lies in its banality and its ability to amplify evil. Evil people are outnumbered. They need the complicity of the masses to succeed. Stupidity provides that complicity by creating a fertile ground for manipulation. The mechanics of stupidity. Bonhoeffer outlines several characteristics of stupidity that make it so potent. It's sociological, not individual. Stupidity thrives in groups, where social pressure and groupthink override personal judgment. People conform to the crowd, even when they know better, because belonging feels safer than standing out. It's self-satisfied. Stupid individuals aren't plagued by doubt. They're confident in their beliefs, even when those beliefs are baseless, making them resistant to correction. It's aggressive when challenged. When confronted with facts, the stupid person doesn't reflect. They attack. This defensiveness makes dialogue impossible. It's manipulable. Because stupidity involves surrendering critical thought, it's easily exploited by those in power. Propaganda, slogans, and emotional appeals can sway entire populations. Historical context. Nazi Germany. Bonhoeffer's theory was born from observing Nazi Germany, where millions supported or acquiesced to Hitler's regime. Germany in the 1930s was a hub of culture, science, and philosophy, yet its people embraced or ignored atrocities. Bonhoeffer noted that this wasn't because they were inherently unintelligent, but because they surrendered their will to think. Propaganda, fear, and social pressure turned rational individuals into a collective that echoed Nazi slogans, ignored evidence of atrocities, and justified their actions as virtuous. Take the example of Kristallnacht in 1938, when mobs destroyed Jewish businesses and synagogues. Many participants weren't evil masterminds. They were ordinary citizens caught in a wave of collective stupidity, believing they were defending their nation. Bonhoeffer saw this as a moral failing, a refusal to question the narrative they were fed. Modern parallels. Fast forward to today, and Bonhoeffer's theory feels eerily relevant. Consider misinformation on social media. A 2018 study from MIT found that false information spreads 6 times faster than truth, largely because it's emotionally charged and simple. People share conspiracy theories or polarizing narratives not because they're unintelligent, but because they're caught in echo chambers that reward conformity over scrutiny. From anti-vaccine movements to political tribalism, we see Bonhoeffer's stupidity at work. People clinging to beliefs, dismissing evidence, and attacking those who challenge them. The psychology behind stupidity. To understand why stupidity takes hold, we need to explore the psychology of conformity and obedience. Bonhoeffer's observations align with several landmark experiments that reveal how humans behave in groups. Solomon Asch's conformity experiment. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch conducted experiments showing that 75% of participants would conform to an obviously wrong answer if the majority of the group supported it. For example, when asked to match the length of a line, participants gave incorrect answers to align with the group, even when they knew the truth. This illustrates Bonhoeffer's point. Under social pressure, people abandon critical thinking, not because they're unintelligent, but because they prioritize belonging. Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments. Stanley Milgram, inspired by the Holocaust, studied obedience in the 1960s. His experiments showed that 65% of participants would administer what they believed were painful electric shocks to a stranger if instructed by an authority figure. Participants weren't evil. They were following orders, suspending their moral judgment. Bonhoeffer would argue this is stupidity in action, people surrendering their will to an external authority, even when it feels wrong. The role of social media today. Social media amplifies these tendencies. Algorithms create echo chambers, feeding us content that reinforces our views. A 2021 study from New York University found that social media platforms prioritize emotional content, which often spreads faster than rational discourse. When we engage with misinformation, we're not just being lazy. We're succumbing to a system designed to exploit our need for certainty and belonging. Bonhoeffer's warning about groupthink feels like a prophecy in the age of X and TikTok. The consequences of stupidity. Stupidity doesn't just affect individuals, it shapes societies and histories. Bonhoeffer saw its consequences in Nazi Germany, but we can trace its impact through other historical and modern examples. Historical examples. The Salem Witch Trials, 1692. In colonial Massachusetts, fear and groupthink led to the execution of 20 people accused of witchcraft. Educated community leaders, caught in a frenzy of moral certainty, ignored evidence and reason, showcasing Bonhoeffer's stupidity centuries before he named it. The Rwandan Genocide, 1994. Propaganda on radio stations fueled ethnic hatred, turning neighbors into killers. Many perpetrators weren't inherently evil, but were swept up in a collective refusal to question the narrative of us versus them. Modern examples. Misinformation campaigns. During the COVID-19 pandemic, false claims about vaccines spread rapidly, leading to measurable public health impacts. A 2020 study estimated that vaccine hesitancy, fueled by misinformation, contributed to thousands of preventable deaths. Polarization. Political tribalism in many countries has led to people dismissing evidence that contradicts their party's narrative, whether it's about climate change, election integrity, or economic policy. This isn't about intelligence, it's about refusing to think independently. The consequences are clear. Stupidity, as Bonhoeffer defined it, enables harm on a massive scale. It's the fuel that powers destructive ideologies, from fascism to modern populism. Why are we so susceptible? If stupidity is so dangerous, why do we fall for it? Bonhoeffer offers clues, and modern psychology backs him up. The need for belonging humans are social creatures, wired to seek acceptance. Conformity feels safe. It signals we're part of the tribe. Challenging the group, on the other hand, risks isolation. Bonhoeffer noted that people in solitude are less prone to stupidity, as they're free from social pressure. In groups, however, we often trade truth for belonging. The comfort of certainty. Doubt is uncomfortable. Certainty is seductive. Bonhoeffer observed that stupid people are self-satisfied, clinging to simple answers even when they're wrong. Neuroscience supports this. Our brains release dopamine when we feel certain, rewarding us for sticking to familiar beliefs, even false ones. The power of authority. Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity flourishes under strong leadership, where people surrender their judgment to a charismatic figure or ideology. This explains why propaganda works. It offers a clear narrative and an authority to trust, relieving us of the burden of thinking. How to resist stupidity. Bonhoeffer didn't just diagnose the problem. He offered a way out. His concept of costly grace emphasized living responsibly before God and society, even at personal risk. Translated into secular terms, this means cultivating intellectual and moral courage. Here are practical steps to resist stupidity in yourself and others. Cultivate critical thinking. Question everything. Train yourself to ask, why do I believe this? What's the evidence? Practice this with small decisions, like evaluating a news article, to build a habit. Seek diverse perspectives. Engage with people who disagree with you. A 2019 study from Harvard showed that exposure to diverse viewpoints increases cognitive flexibility, reducing the risk of groupthink. Pause before reacting. Social media thrives on emotional reactions. Take a moment to reflect before sharing or commenting. This small act can break the cycle of stupidity. Build empathy. Bonhoeffer's theory implies that stupidity often stems from a lack of empathy, failing to consider how our actions affect others. Practice empathy by asking, how would I feel in their shoes? This can counteract the dehumanizing effects of groupthink. Embrace discomfort. Independent thinking is costly. It might alienate you from your peers or force you to confront uncomfortable truths. Bonhoeffer's own life is a testament to this. He spoke out against the Nazis, knowing it could cost him everything. Embrace the discomfort of doubt and uncertainty as a sign you're thinking for yourself. Educate others gently. You can't argue someone out of stupidity. As Bonhoeffer noted, reason falls on deaf ears. Instead, model critical thinking and empathy. Share stories, ask questions, and create space for others to reflect without feeling attacked. Limit echo chambers. Curate your media diet. Follow sources with differing perspectives, and fact-check claims using primary sources. Tools like Snopes or PolitiFact can help, but go deeper. Check original studies or data when possible. Applying Bonhoeffer's theory. Today, Bonhoeffer's insights aren't just historical. They're a guide for navigating our world. Let's explore how his theory applies to three modern challenges: misinformation and social media. Social media platforms are breeding grounds for stupidity as they reward emotional certainty over reason. To combat this, practice digital literacy, verify sources, cross-check claims, and limit time on platforms that amplify outrage. Encourage your community to do the same. Political polarization. In polarized times, people cling to party lines, dismissing evidence that challenges their side. Bonhoeffer's solution is to prioritize truth over tribe. Engage in good faith discussions, focusing on shared values rather than differences. For example, if debating climate change, start with a common concern, like protecting future generations, before diving into data. Workplace and leadership stupidity can infect workplaces where employees conform to bad decisions to avoid rocking the boat. If you're a leader, foster a culture where dissent is valued. If you're an employee, speak up respectfully, framing your concerns as solutions. Bonhoeffer's courage in resisting Nazi ideology shows the power of standing firm, even in small ways. The hope in Bonhoeffer's warning, Bonhoeffer's theory is terrifying, but it's also empowering. He reminds us that stupidity is not inevitable. It's a choice. By choosing to think critically, act with empathy, and embrace the cost of independent thought, we can resist the tide of conformity. Bonhoeffer himself embodied this hope. Even in prison, facing certain death, he wrote with clarity and conviction, urging others to live responsibly. He also offered a note of optimism. It really will depend on whether those in power expect more from people's stupidity than from their inner independence and wisdom. In other words, the future hinges on whether we demand better of ourselves and each other. If we cultivate wisdom and courage, we can overcome the silent danger of stupidity. Final words, your role in the fight. As we close this lesson, let's reflect on Bonhoeffer's chilling warning. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. But we're not entirely helpless. By understanding the nature of stupidity, its roots in conformity, its resistance to reason, its power to amplify evil, we can arm ourselves with the tools to fight back. Critical thinking, empathy, and courage are our weapons. They're not easy to wield, but they're within our reach. Think about your own life. Where have you seen stupidity at work? Maybe it's in a heated online debate, a workplace decision that defies logic, or even a moment when you caught yourself going along with the crowd. Now ask, what can you do differently? Bonhoeffer's life shows us that one person's courage can ripple outward, inspiring others to think, question, and act. This lesson isn't just about understanding a theory. It's a call to action. In a world awash with noise and manipulation, your mind is your greatest asset. Guard it fiercely, question boldly, and live with the costly grace Bonhoeffer championed. The stakes are high, but so is the reward. A world where wisdom triumphs over stupidity.